Почитувани, добро вечер. Време е за уште едно издание на емисијата И што сега на јавниот сервис, овој пат во еден малку поинаков амбиент. Ке имаме можност да разговараме со канадската амбасадорка, нејзината екселенција Кати Csaba, која ја покрива нашата земја од Белград. Со неа ќе продискутираме за односите помеѓу Канада и Северна Македонија, за едното партнерство во НАТО, за нашата диаспора која е голема во оваа земја, за економската, научната, образовната соработка. Амбасадорке, најпрво ви благодарам што одвоивте време за ова интервју.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a great pleasure for me to be here.
Како ги оценувате билатералните односи меѓу Канада и Северна Македонија?
I would say for a start that our bilateral relations are dynamic and strong. Canada considers itself to be a friend to North Macedonia. And I want to announce right away that we're very pleased to have a new honorary consul, Aneta Pusheva, who is doing a lot to strengthen the relations between our two countries. Canada firmly believes in North Macedonia's Euro-Atlantic future. So we, of course, are looking forward to seeing your country join us in NATO, but we see this perspective of Euro-Atlantic relations as being very important on two fronts. First of all, because this is a way of continuing to see progress in your country, which will be to the benefit of all Macedonians. But also because by becoming a member of these groups, you are strengthening and able to play a stronger role in regional stability and security. And I must say on that front that we have seen North Macedonia playing a very constructive role with its neighboring countries. Of course, the Prespa agreement is probably the biggest example of that. And this is a development that we welcomed very much. But also in terms of other relations, other agreements that have been agreed with neighboring countries, this is a sign that North Macedonia is taking its role seriously as a player in this region. And again, Euro-Atlantic integration will only support that. We work together as countries in a range of ways. So in multilateral forums, for example, Canada and North Macedonia work together on issues that are of common interest, so that we are both working to build on the values that we hold dear. Bilaterally, we have several agreements in place already, most recent of which was the bilateral declaration of strategic partnership and cooperation, which was signed by our two ministers of foreign affairs in July 2018. And this sets a good framework for us to continue our cooperation. I know that the recent decision by the European Union not to open accession discussions with North Macedonia has come as a big disappointment, and we share that disappointment. But what I would like to say is that it's important to continue down the path of reforms. All of the reforms that this country is undertaking around good governance, around rule of law, judicial independence, the freedom of the media, human and minority rights, including gender equality, these are all values and developments that are going to serve to the benefit of the citizens of this country. So regardless of how they fit within the accession progress, they are important in and of themselves. And of course, they are also important as you move down the path of accession. And I hope very much to see a decision coming sooner rather than later that will open the door for this country to start its path towards EU integration.
На почетокот на разговорот споменав дека ја покривате земјава од Белград. Колку ова ви дава простор да бидете запознаена добро со приликите во нашата земја и воопшто каков е ставот на Канада за регионов?
So yes, the Canadian embassy in Belgrade is responsible for our relations with Serbia, with Montenegro, and with North Macedonia. I have made it a real point to travel as often as I can to North Macedonia because I think it's important to follow the developments that are going on here. You are at a very exciting time in your history. There have been many important developments over the past few years. You are on the doorstep of becoming a NATO member, and you have other important reforms that have been initiated and that will continue. So I've been coming on a regular basis. This is in fact my second trip to Skopje this month alone. And I've also tried as much as possible to travel a little bit around the country. So I've had a chance to visit Gevgelija, for example, and also Tetovo. I had interesting meetings with the mayors of both of those cities, as well as other community organizations there. And I hope that in the time remaining to me, I will have a chance to visit other parts of North Macedonia. I have not yet had a chance to visit Ohrid. I know that this is a cultural treasure, and I plan on visiting as soon as I have an opportunity. But again, to say I think it's important for me and also my colleagues at the embassy to be following carefully what is happening in this country. We want to be a friend. We want to be able to show our support, our commitment to North Macedonia's future progress, and so we can only do that if we really understand what is happening here.
Многу наскоро, најверојатно во почетокот на идната година, нашата земја ќе стане полноправна членка на НАТО. Каква соработка очекувате да имаме Канада и Северна Македонија во рамки на алијансата?
We are very much looking forward to the day when North Macedonia becomes the newest member of NATO and our official ally in this organization. Canada deposited its instrument of ratification in June of this year, so we have done our part to make sure that this goes forward, and I know there are still only one or two countries that still need to complete the ratification process. So by joining this alliance, this will give us a variety of opportunities to work together. We will have a chance to work together in missions in various parts of the world, peacekeeping operations, for example, and we look forward to working on policy issues as well that are of importance to both our countries as well as to the other members of NATO. One such policy issue that I would mention are the Vancouver Principles on Peacekeeping and the Prevention of the Use of Child Soldiers. This is a policy that was developed by Canada, and we were very pleased to see that recently North Macedonia also endorsed this policy. I think everyone would agree that having child soldiers engaged in conflicts is a very bad thing. And so this will be an issue around which we can work together in the context of NATO. I should mention as well, though, that even before North Macedonia becomes a member of NATO, we have been involved in defense and security cooperation with your country for quite some time. So since 1998, our Ministry of Defense has offered a series of educational and training activities at no cost, which have been taken up by military and civilian personnel from your Ministry of Defense. And these have been really useful opportunities to work together. It's an important way of developing the interoperability that will be key to working together in the context of NATO. And I had a chance to visit one of these courses last year together with Minister H.E.Kati, and we could see for ourselves that this course was really very useful for the participants. So this is just a start to the kinds of ways that we will be able to cooperate in future.
Канада е една од земјите основачи на НАТО. Каква е вашата перцепција колку алијансата е гарант на безбедноста и дали нашата земја со право се надева дека членството ќе донесе стабилност?
I think it's important to remember that NATO is not only a military alliance, it's also a political alliance. And this is based on common and shared values around democracy and rule of law. So by working together on these shared values, it means that every member state of NATO is working towards greater stability and security in the region that is covered by the alliance. So I think this is very much in North Macedonia's interest to see this kind of greater stability in the region. It's also, I think, a signal for investors as well. When they see that a country becomes a member of an alliance like NATO, they see this as a sign of stability and predictability, and that makes it maybe more interesting for foreign investors to look at this as a country where they would like to invest their resources. So I think that there's a potential economic aspect of NATO membership that is also important to keep in mind. And of course, we hope that, that as part of our cooperation within NATO, there will be opportunities for us to share military equipment and technologies that are developed in Canada that could be of use to the defense forces here.
Имаме ли податоци колку македонци живеат во Канада, земја која е позната како земја во која различни култури функционираат во хармонија, што не е случај во други земји од светот?
Yes, in our latest census, which was carried out in 2016, 43,000 people identified themselves as being of Macedonian origin. It's possible that there are many more people, in fact, who are of Macedonian origin, but they chose not to declare themselves in the census. And this diaspora, this Macedonian diaspora, plays a really important role. They are very active. They contribute to Canada as a culture, as a society, and they also are at the basis of many aspects of our cooperation. So let me tell you a little bit about Canada as a multicultural country and how for example, the Macedonian diaspora fits in. So, of course, we are a new country, a young country. The original inhabitants of our land were the indigenous people who lived there originally, what we call the First Nations, the Inuit people, the Métis people, who have been there for a very long time. And right now in Canada, they number around 1.5 million citizens. And then since the discovery of the Americas, there has been a steady flow of immigrants, originally from France and Britain, and then expanding to other parts of Europe, and then most recently from Asia, from Africa, and from the Americas. All of these people come to Canada because they have a vision for themselves and for their families of a better life. And one of the things that I'm very proud to say is that we really are proud of the fact that we are a multicultural society, and we see diversity as a source of strength. What that means is we are not, when people come to Canada, we are not asking them to completely give up their original identity, whether it's their ethnic identity or religious or cultural identity. We think that new members of Canadian society should be able to retain those links with their past while also adapting to Canadian values. And so this way they become part of the great mosaic that is Canada. And of course we have policies in place to promote multiculturalism. And this is still a relatively new concept in Canada from 40 or 50 years back. But it has taken time also for people to get used to the idea. But really we've created a society where there is a growing feeling of tolerance and respect for the diversity that all of these different cultures represent. So Canada's system has worked well because it's been based in part on geography, on history, and on the fact that we have taken very deliberate policies to encourage multiculturalism and to bring in migrants from around the world. And this has worked for us. We have a whole system in place that we use to bring in the people who are going to thrive and do the best in Canada. And that includes the process for selecting migrants for Canada. We have also systems in place to help newcomers adapt to their new society. And then we have these multicultural and citizenship policies that help them to become members of Canadian society. I know that this is a model that is probably quite specific to Canada based on our history and geography. And so I recognize that perhaps it's not the right model for every country. But what I would say is that the values that we hold dear in Canada, the values around tolerance and respect for diversity, that these are values that should be applied in every society.
Јасно е дека македонската заедница представува мост меѓу Канада и нашата земја. Што може да се направи за дополнително да се продлабочи оваа соработка?
Indeed, the Macedonian diaspora does play an important role and in a variety of fronts on the economic side, cultural, educational, and scientific side. So part of my job, I think, is to be in touch with the Macedonian diaspora, and I do try to reach out to them when I'm visiting Canada to encourage their activities. Many recent arrivals in Canada are interested, in fact, in retaining their links to your country. Many of them express that by developing business interests. And so when you look at some of the trade and investment opportunities that have arisen over the past 20 or so years, at the heart of many of those, you will see members of the diaspora community. And I think, in terms of how we can continue to promote that, it's important for North Macedonia to be open to the trade and investment opportunities that exist, which I think you are, and just continuing to share the word with your diaspora communities in Canada, but also in other countries that you're interested in cooperation.
Го споменавте диверзитетот на Канада. Во вашата земја има два официјални јазика. Како ова функционира во реалноста, внесува ли забуни или одредени институционални бариери?
Canada is indeed a fully bilingual country at the federal level. And that means that our institutions at the federal level are responsible for providing services to Canadians in our two official languages, which are English and French. I should mention that besides those two official languages, there are at least 200 other languages that are spoken in Canada by various ethnic and cultural groups. And also I would note that for 8 million Canadians, neither English or French is their first language. So they have grown up speaking a different mother tongue and then have learned English or French. So what does it mean for our country to be a bilingual country? What it means is at the federal level, anyone who is seeking to receive services from the federal government has the right to be served in either English or French, their preferred language. So if you're going to the post office to buy stamps, or you need to renew your passport, or you have a question about your federal pension, when you go into a federal office or you call someone on the phone, you have the right to be served in either English or French, as you choose. That means that employees of the federal government, of course, must be, at least to a certain degree, bilingual. And we all get tested on our language capacities, and people have opportunities to take language training if they're not as fluent as they should be in the second language. Our parliament also, our national parliament, functions on a bilingual basis. So deputies in parliament feel free to speak in either language as they choose, and there's a system of simultaneous interpretation which allows other deputies to understand what's being said. All of our laws and our policies at the federal level are published, they're developed and they're published in both official languages. So again, everyone can easily see what are the different laws that apply to them in the language of their choice. Does this mean that every Canadian needs to be bilingual? Absolutely not. Many Canadians, in fact, are not bilingual. In our recent census, showed that 86% of Canadians feel comfortable having a conversation in English. 30% of Canadians feel comfortable having a conversation in French. And only 18% of Canadians feel comfortable having a conversation in both English and French. So as you see, there are not necessarily a lot of people across the country who are bilingual, but it's all about the services that are offered to people so that they know that they have that choice. And to go along with that policy, of course, we have educational systems in place. Every child going to an English school has a certain number of hours of French classes, and the same for French students who have a certain number of hours of English classes. We've also experimented over the years with programs like French immersion. And I'm myself a product of this system. When I started school in kindergarten, my teacher only spoke French. And we were all English children in the class, but the teacher only spoke French to us, and that is how we started to learn French. And then slowly over time, we added more courses in English. But I grew up really speaking both of these languages, and of course, this has helped me enormously in my career in the federal public service.
Да преминеме на економија, кои се клучните области за економска соработка помеѓу двете земји и какви се досегашните искуства на канадските компании кои работат во Северна Македонија?
So I'm pleased to say we've seen a growing trend of increased trade and investment between our two countries over the past years. Our trade is still fairly modest, but it's growing, and that means it's headed in the right direction. So the main products that are exported from Canada to North Macedonia include motor vehicles and parts, include meat, and various electrical equipment and technologies. Going the other direction, from North Macedonia to Canada, we see imports of iron and steel products, of agricultural products, fruits and vegetables, and so on. So there's room to grow. And we consider that agriculture and ICT and clean technologies are going to be the wave of the future as we continue to develop our economic relations. And certainly as we are now in this era of climate change, clean technologies are becoming increasingly important. And Canada has invested a lot of resources in research and development to develop new technologies that we think are of interest to many countries, including to yours. So we look forward to finding ways to introduce some of those technologies here. In terms of the impression that businesses have of your country, I think it's a very good sign that in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report, North Macedonia occupies a quite high position, because this is a demonstration that it's fairly easy to do business here. It's not to say there's not room for improvement. There always is in every country. But you offer a degree of stability and security that makes it attractive for foreign investors.
Што може да направиме за да очекуваме уште повеќе канадски инвестиции во земјава?
So I think the area that has the greatest potential for investment in North Macedonia is in the field of mining. And I know when I say the word mining, many people have a very negative image of what mining is. And they picture images of I won't even go into what they picture, but it's very negative. And what I want to say about that is Canada is a country that is a leader now in sustainable mining. We take great pride in the fact that our Canadian companies have followed various sets of values and principles that affect their work, that make sure that everything that they do is sustainable, that they are caring for local communities, that they are caring for the local environment. We also have very strict laws in place that mean that Canadian companies in the mining sector, when they're working in Canada and when they're working in countries abroad, have to abide by these strict laws. So it's a sector that's important in our own economy. It's a sector that's important to everyone. We couldn't live without the products of mining, without our cars and our mobile telephones and other electronic devices, all of which rely on the results of mining. And so I see this as an area where there is good potential for Canadian investment. There's one company, Euromax, that has already been doing some exploration work in southeastern North Macedonia. And they look to have made some interesting finds. So they are in the process of continuing with the permitting process for their project. And I hope that this project will go forward because it has the potential to bring a great deal of economic prosperity to that community while also caring for local communities and the ecological situation of that region. So that's the sector I think is the most relevant and most important. But of course, as I was saying earlier, there's also room for cooperation in clean technologies, in agriculture, in ICT, and so on. And I know that there are many Canadian companies, in fact, that rely on the excellent programmers who have been trained and who are working here in the IT industry and who cooperate very closely with those Canadian companies.
Како ја оценувате културната и научната соработка меѓу двете земји?
I think we have very good and growing cooperation in cultural, educational, and scientific cooperation. And it's very much based, again, on the diaspora community, on the fact that there are many Canadians of Macedonian origin who are interested in cooperating with their country of origin. So on the cultural side, we try every year to organize various cultural activities. On November 27th, we'll be featuring a performance by a Canadian string quartet, the Molinari Quartet at the Macedonian Philharmonic, which is an example of a young, modern string quartet playing classical music in Canada. And at the same time, we had the well-known Canadian rocker, Brian Adams, who performed a concert here in Skopje just 2 weeks ago, and I had a chance to be at that concert, and it was a great event. The audience, I think, really appreciated it. We also have cooperation around book publishing. So there are Macedonian and Albanian language publishers here who, over the past few years, have translated a number of titles from English and French, from Canadian authors, into those two languages. And I think there are already more than 20 titles just in the past 2 years that have been translated and published. So that's another great area. We have we like to bring artists and have art shows, art exhibits in Skopje and elsewhere. So we've had art exhibits both at the National Gallery and in the City Gallery, the City Museum of Skopje. And we cooperate in other ways. So for example, the well-known Canadian writer Margaret Atwood was here at the Struga Poetry Festival a few years ago, and she in fact won a prize at that festival. So we're always on the lookout for opportunities where we can bring Canadian culture and showcase it here. It also works the other way. So there's a Canadian of Macedonian origin, Gradimir Pankov, who emigrated to Canada and who has played a very influential role in the world of dance. So he is a choreographer, one of the best in Canada, and he's also the artistic director of Les Grands Ballets de Montréal, which performed, in fact, in Skopje a few years ago. So that's an example of how we continue to build those cultural ties in both directions. On the educational front, we of course have opportunities for international students to study at Canadian universities. There are various scholarship programs and co-op programs that may be of interest to, among others, to students coming from this country. And we are happy to provide more information about what those opportunities are. On the more on the business side, One of our well-known business schools, the Richard Ivey School of Business, based at the University of Western Ontario, for the past few years has been offering a 2-week intensive course in business management to young business people and entrepreneurs who are interested in starting their own business or improving their current business. And so we have this business school that comes and presents this program for people who are interested in that kind of learning and cooperation. And of course, we have cooperation between various academic institutions. So from time to time, we look at bringing Canadian professors to work to offer lectures at Macedonian universities and vice versa. So we cover a pretty good range of activities.
За крај на интервјуто, уште едно прашање. Организирате денови на Канада во Скопје. Кои активности се предвидени за оваа манифестација?
So these Canada Days in Skopje have been organized in cooperation with several partners, including the Canadian Music Centre Polyphonia, the Macedonian Philharmonic, the Faculty of Philology Blaže Koneski, also there's a think tank Analytica, and Mladi Hub. So they all are hosting activities. And all of the activities are centered around the reception that we will be hosting on November 27th in honor of Canada Day. So on November 27th, there will be a concert at 8 p.m. In the Macedonian Philharmonic by the Canadian string quartet Molinari, which is based in Montreal, and they will be performing a range of pieces, some of them composed by Canadian composers. Then on the 28th of November, we also have several activities. I will be delivering a lecture at the Faculty of Philology all about Canada and our culture. And I'll be delivering that lecture in a combination of English and French to demonstrate our language diversity. I will also be opening a workshop together with Minister Tsarovska with a group of students from vocational secondary schools. And this workshop has been organized by Analytica. And the idea here is to work with students to help them understand that they shouldn't restrict their career choices based on what they consider to be traditional male or female roles. So we're trying to work in the area of gender equality and promote the idea that you should be able to study and work in whatever field interests you, regardless of if you're a man or a woman. We'll also be holding an information session at 6 p.m. on November 28th at Mladi Hub, where we will be talking about educational opportunities in Canada, what kind of scholarship opportunities there are, what kind of co-op programs exist. And so I think this will be of interest to many people who are looking to come to Canada. And throughout many of these activities, I will also be speaking about the fact that the annual international campaign, the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, just got started on November 25th. And this is a campaign that Canada supports very much, and I know your country supports as well. And so it will be an opportunity to talk about how we need to work together as societies to overcome gender-based violence. So we have a rich program. I'm looking forward to these 2 days and to meeting with many people from Skopje and elsewhere.
Амбасадорке, ви благодарам за интервјуто.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you this evening.
Почитувани, останете со програмата на јавниот сервис. Пријатна вечер.